Are you missing these three movement compensations? If you're a trainer or therapist, chances are you've seen these three compensations but don't know what to do about it or why they happen. So in this video, we're going to break down three different movement compensations, what to do, how to improve them, and why they happen. Hi, I'm Alex Zephyr, founder of Resilient Training Rehab, and I've helped thousands of coaches and clinicians get faster and more consistent results with their clients. Let's get into it. So the first major compensation that a lot of people miss in terms of not being able to know how to address it and why it happens is the rib flare. And so if you ever seen somebody press overhead, they flare their ribs, even just laying on the table, you see the rib cage poking out. The reason why this happens is because the center of mass is leaning so far forward that we are then extending through the rib cage, not through the pelvis. So as I'm walking, I need to extend my hip to push myself forward. If I don't have that ability to extend the hip, I'm going to do it either from the lower back or for some people through the lower part of the rib cage. Additionally, if I'm going overhead, if I don't have the ability to flex the shoulder because maybe this space isn't open, which is key for shoulder flexion, then I'm going to arch through the lower part of the rib cage, because as I go deeper ranges of shoulder flexion, I'm going to hit a wall where I can't go anymore. So the only way I can move forward is if the shoulder blade pushes against the rib cage and I shift everything forward. So the rib flare is a center of mass problem, but it's also a position problem. If I don't have the ability to open up in between the shoulder blades, and I don't have the ability to keep this rib cage locked down as the shoulder goes overhead, then I'm going to start to arch through the lower part of the rib cage. So let's talk about an exercise we can do to overcome this and to shift the center of mass back while opening up the back side of the rib cage. So in order to address this, there are many different exercises we've done. As you see on my YouTube channel, as well as through my courses and programs, I've used multiple different exercises in order to address the rib flare. But one of the main principles I want you to think about is we need to be thinking about pushing our center of mass back. So when it comes to the rib cage, there are certain muscles on the front part of the rib cage that need to grab onto the ribs and pull them back. That being the serratus anterior as well as the internal obliques. And so by using a band and thinking about pushing myself back, I'm going to be able to engage those muscles to help shift that rib cage back. So I really like to do this low reaching wall squat position. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just walk my feet out in front a little bit. That way I have the ability to push myself back into the wall. And then I'm going to keep the tag of my pants or my belt line nice and firm against the wall without using too much stomach muscles. I don't want you to push into the wall and think about crunching like that. I just want you to just gently push into the wall with your belt line, and you're going to feel that by pushing through your feet. I'm going to take the band, wrap it around my lower part of the rib cage, and then I'm going to wrap it around my thumbs and do something that's a little bit light. If it's too heavy, you're going to really struggle to do it. So just do something that's a little bit light. And then what you're going to do is you're going to just reach out in front. And when you reach out in front, you're going to feel your back being pushed against it. And so instead of just reaching, I want you to think about pushing yourself back. I'm going to do it at a low angle because that's going to activate certain muscles that are going to help pull the rib cage back. It's also going to help open up the lower rib cage and in between the shoulder blades. And then from this position, I'm just going to hold it for breaths. Take a big breath in through my nose. As I breathe out, I'm going to reach further. And again, I don't want my back to be pulled off. I want you to just think that the reaching is going to bring the shoulder blades away from the spine. Breathe in. Breathe out, reach. And we'll just do it for breaths. You usually do about 2 sets of 6 breaths. Second compensation is lumbar extension. Again, people have seen this. They see an anterior pelvic tilt. They understand that there is an arch to the lower back. However, their solution is based on their ability to try to bring the lumbar spine back towards the ground. But we have to appreciate that this is not a lumbar spine problem or a lower back problem. This is a pelvic position problem and the inability to express movements like hip extension and hip internal rotation. Okay, so if I don't have the ability to internally rotate the hip, internal rotation and hip extension are both about putting force into the ground. So I'm trying to propel myself forward. If I don't have the ability to internally rotate the hip or extend the hip, then I'm going to do it through my lower back, because lumbar extension is going to replace hip extension. And what you'll see is the lumbar extension, you'll see a little bit of a rib flare, so it's related to rib flare, and you'll also see the knees hyperextending. For some people, you'll also see collapsed feet. So all of this is an inability to internally rotate and extend the hip. And so in order to overcome this, it isn't about tucking the tailbone underneath and trying to get lumbar flexion. That's not going to resolve anything. We need to be thinking about internally rotating the hips and extending the hips in a position that allow us to shift the center of mass back while maintaining some degree of arch, because it's important the lumbar spine maintains some degree of arch. Otherwise, what you get is you have people who are just trying to crunch and they start to move more into that sway back position. That's not what we want. We don't want the hips to be pushed underneath, because if the center of gravity is going towards my toes, if I just squeeze my glutes, you can see my hips are going towards my toes again. So it's not actually creating a solution. It is just magnifying the position they're already in. So we need to open up the space in the back part of the pelvis, as well as open up the space in the back part of the hip or the posterior capsule. Because if I open up these two spaces, then I'm going to have the ability to shift back and then be able to produce force. Because if I want something like the glute to work, for example, that's going to push me forward, then I need to put it in a lengthened position first before I allow it to contract. So in this next exercise, we're going to talk about putting you in a position where you can put force into the ground and drive hip extension, but from a hip flexed position. Because if I flex my hip, then I'm going to go into extension, but by having the knee in front of me, it's going to naturally allow me to shift my weight back towards my heel. Before I show you the exercise, if you've been following me for a while, can you guess what exercise I'm going to pick? As I mentioned, there are three key things we want to think about. First, I want to shift the weight back towards my heels. Second, I want to make sure the knees are in front of me. And third, I want to make sure that I'm able to produce hip extension while maintaining some degree of knee flexion. So this is why I really like doing heels elevated, because it's going to push me towards my toes. I'm actually going to have to sit back, holding onto a cable, same thing. I'm going to have to shift my center of gravity forward, so I got to push myself back against the cable. And then doing a squat position is going to keep the knees in front of me. So now what I can do is I can start with my center of gravity back towards my heels, which is just going to naturally open up all the back side of my body, which is going to be lengthening the glute first. And then I'm going to breathe in as I go down. Again, maintaining a vertical position. I don't want you to go down and you're hinging. I want you to go down as you maintain a slight vertical position. Breathe out, breathe in. Just going to open up the back part of the hip and then breathe out. And when I go up, I'm not going up like this. I'm keeping the knee slightly bent. So this is just going to teach me how to be able to internally rotate while staying in my heels, as well as I come up at the bottom of the squat where hip extension happens, I'm not able to go in towards my toes and arch through my lower back. This is a great way to ensure that I'm doing the right position and making sure the right things are happening in the foot, knee, hip, and rib cage. So the third one is going to be knee valgus. This is your knock knees, where you have your knees coming together, but your feet are coming apart. So this happens for a couple reasons. First, I don't have the ability to internally rotate my hip. And so when I want to bend my knee, I need the tibia to be able to internally rotate. If the tibia can internally rotate, that allows the inside part of my hamstrings to pull to bend my knee effectively. A lot of times people will be standing with this tibia turned out. So if you look at the pointy part of the knee, right below the kneecap, you can see the tibial tuberosity. That tibial tuberosity, if it's pointing out towards the side, then that is a knee that is more extended. It can't bend very well. So the reason why people have this knee valgus is because they can't internally rotate the hip. So what they do is they just try to bend everything inward. That's why you see more of this curve going inwards, but the tibia is still turning out. So a lot of times in my experience, people get inside knee discomfort because of this bending. And the second reason why this happens is when somebody has their foot in front of them, then if they don't have the ability to turn into that hip, so they can't rotate the pelvis back on that side. So if you picture a split squat, I basically have this kind of position. This foot's in front, this foot's behind, and because this foot is behind, this is going to extend the hip. And so if this hip extends, it's going to turn me towards this flexed leg. Well, if I don't have that ability, then what's going to happen is the pelvis is actually going to turn away from that side, and that's going to cause the knee to cave in. And so when this happens, this is not only a limitation in hip internal rotation, but this is also a limitation in hip extension. This isn't just an inability to internally rotate the hip, but it's also an inability to flex the hip. Because when I flex the hip, the pelvis is going to turn into that direction. So now I've got a situation where I have to drive internal rotation with hip extension so that I can start to restore the ability to just bend the knee as well as internally rotate the hip. So from this position, we're going to be thinking about exercises again where the foot is in front and driving a rotation towards that side. Because again, once I'm in this position where the pelvis needs to rotate, if I've got everything twisting out already, well, I'm going to try to push myself back in towards the middle. And as you can see, the whole pelvis rotates away from that side. So I've got to put myself in a position where I can get this tibia to internally rotate while keeping this femur where it is so that I can get that internal rotation happening at the hip. Because what's happening is it's just happening too much at the knee. So we have to find an exercise that is going to internally rotate the tibia, keep this lower part of the femur where it is so that the hip can do its job. So can you guess what exercise I'm going to choose? Comment below. So this is going to be the front foot elevated split squat with a band pulling the knee out. So what's going to happen is because I've got my front foot elevated, it's naturally going to shift my weight back towards my heel. I'm going to shift my weight back onto the back leg naturally, which is great because by keeping the weight back in the heel, I'm able to open up the lower part of the hip, which is going to try to squeeze everything out into external rotation. So I get that happening. I also have this band that's pulling the knee out more. If the knee gets pulled out, well, everything below the knee has to turn in. So now I'm driving that internal rotation at the tibia. Then by holding the dumbbell, that is going to turn me into this side. So as I mentioned, I need the pelvis to also rotate towards the side. So now I've got this happening. And now what I can do is I can breathe in as I go down, breathe out as I come up, and I can ensure that I'm keeping that knee flexed by, as I'm coming up, I'm not letting the knee come back, but I'm keeping it forward. So when I'm going up and down, I'm not being vertical like a rocket ship, I'm being more horizontal like an airplane. So I'm going down and I'm coming up and over that knee. I'm trying to keep the knee in between the second and fourth toe. In this video, we talked about 3 different compensations that most trainers and therapists miss, what to do about them, and why they happen. If you want to learn more about compensations like this and what to do about them, check out my Evolve Biomechanics mentorship. We dive deep into compensations just like this and go through case studies in order to address these limitations. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, save, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. If you like this video, check out the Resilient YouTube channel. We've got hundreds of videos just like this. And if you want to stay up to date to the most current videos, hit that subscribe button.